Welcome to the Dream Achievers podcast, where we focus on business owners and purpose-driven leaders in our local communities. We meet people every day where we shop, eat, and do life, and want to bring their stories to you each and every Wednesday. Now, let's get to this week's guest.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Dream Achievers. This is Andy Young, the Mountain Money Man, and I'm joined by a couple that, for a lot of you, need no introduction because you've seen them at so many events here in the area. I've got the Pakalachian that's joining us with that. So I got Katlin and Mohsin that are joining us, and they're kind enough to welcome me in the home because we're waiting on a welcome addition to come along here soon.
Number two, second boy coming into the family.
Can't even tell.
And the last one. I know. Get over here.
She's hiding well with the scarf.
Get my scarf on.
Yeah. Well, guys, again, thanks so much for your time of being able to go through. And, when I think about community events and I think about how often I see you guys popped up at stuff, one of the things that always comes to my mind is, for a lot of people, this is kind of an interesting fusion of stuff. You've got that classic Southern and you've got more of an ethnic side to it. So you show up and it's totally different. So what was the brainchild of this that just kind of developed that, hey, we need to jump in?
You can start.
So my family's from Pakistan originally, and I was raised essentially only eating Pakistani food until I kind of left the house and went to college, right? So it's pretty much in me. We'd go on vacation, and my parents would find the Pakistani restaurant.
They still
like,
do.
oh, finally, we can try something else out. My mom would make spaghetti, but it would be like Pakistani-fied every time. And
that still happens too.
and Caitlin, I feel like what's your background?
So yeah, I grew up, I guess, on my grandmother's kitchen counter is what we always say, right? It's in an ongoing joke in Appalachia, but for sure it really happened. And when we got married, all of the things that you were talking about, I had no clue about, right? Like I obviously had been exposed to diverse foods, but not in my own home, right? So he would make food one night, and then I would make food that I grew up with the next night, and then they started coming together in like the form of leftovers, right? And thus was born an idea, which all good things start with an idea. And then we started being like, these two things play together really nicely, and how can we make this more than what it is, especially in a place that doesn't have any Pakistani food at that time, except still even now, right? Except for our food, but that's what's born in the Pakalachian.
Well, I know for all of us, we share a love of Virginia Tech with
that's
that.
where we met. Yeah.
So, for me, that was kind of my first entry point to any type of food outside of just normal fast food, country type food.
Blacksburg's got a great food scene, yeah.
And my introduction was I worked catering, so we were based out of Owens Dining Hall.
Yeah.
And the shortest line when I had a lunch break was always the ethnic food. So that's where it was like, okay, I've never had a lentil. What's a lentil?
Right.
Really? That's interesting.
So, it was just that introduction and the different flavors and fusions of stuff that plays. So, it makes sense when you say, hey, you grew up on your grandma's counter and, with biscuits and gravy and everything else.
Comes with that,
Yeah, and that was your comfort point. But for you, Mohsin, that your comfort point was, hey, we grew up, that this was when you wanted that food that just kind of wrapped you and engulfed you, that was the mindset.
That was his food. And still now, if he goes on a big trip, it's funny. Sometimes we'll have soup, beans, and cornbread when he gets back, and sometimes we'll have Pakistani food. It just depends on what he's in the mood for. But now he seeks comfort in both, right? Yeah. It's interesting.
So my favorite meal when I get back is soup, beans, and cornbread. It's just,
it
feels like home in a way that I think it's just because we live here now, and everyone around here feels that way, and with a Coke. You know what I mean?
My grandfather will say, "Man, I've not had it. I've got to have it. I haven't had it in 2 weeks. I've got to have it."
It's like a soup bean battery that diminishes that you have to refill.
See, I have that for Long John Silver's.
Really?
That it's like I hit about a 3-month mark,
and I go. Which mark can you find a Long John Silver's now?
Luckily, there's still one in Lebanon.
Is there?
It's the one I worked at in high school.
Because the one here in Abingdon is
they closed that one. But for me, I hit like that 3 to 4 month mark, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't had a hush puppy from Long John's.
My grandmother used to love. Nana used to love like the little crunchies at the bottom of the hush puppies.
Yeah, that was my Sunday morning of go to early church and then go start to make the crumbles.
Have you seen that meme where it's like, who are the people keeping Long John's open? And you're one of those people.
I'm one of those people. Listen, I can remember the line on Sundays and everything, that it was crazy with that. But speaking of lines, when you guys are set up, you can't offer everything that you do on your menu all the time. You kind of have to pick and choose. It's not picking and choosing favorite children, but it's picking and choosing. Hey, we know that we're going to have the curry me down south. We know that we're going to.
Some things can't leave the menu.
Yeah. So if I don't have that, they're going to tip the truck over.
Right.
100%.
But how do you go through and choose, like, hey, what are we going to offer at this certain event? Does it vary depending upon the time of year and what's available to make?
So a couple things, right? So one, we're always looking for the most seasonally appropriate type of produce, right? So in fall, we'll kind of lean into the squashes and the different kind of, the ones that we got
The ones that are here, actually.
that we're growing. And then we kind of do summer, we focus on tomatoes. Towards the end of summer, we'll do fried green tomato pakoras. But that's just one element. The other element is we found that on a food truck, if you list out like a deli, 15 or 20 different options, you need to facilitate that in storage and making sure that everything is kept where it belongs. But then B, I've noticed customers get kind of bogged down with all the reading and trying to figure out what they want.
Especially given our fusion, right? Especially given the nature of our food. So we try to keep it to three to four items when we park. And Mohsin always wants a vegetarian item. He's very much a big proponent of always having that option on the truck, and I agree. So we do always have a vegetarian option.
And a vegetarian option that has substance and depth, right? Because you could always just make someone a cheese sandwich and say it's vegetarian. Right, but growing up, I was always eating halal and looking for an option everywhere I went, and it was always something like oversimplified that didn't really respect the customer.
It's like, here's your rice and some sauteed veggies.
Right.
And it didn't fill you up, right? You always wanted something that's more substantial.
And I think that's been a really exciting thing because we have a simple menu, we can get it out really quick, and we put all our heart and soul into those three items.
Yeah, it's by design, right?
We can always just put in maximum effort to three items. It's easy to explain. If someone comes in and they want a chicken sandwich, but you really want them to try the vegetarian item, you're not losing time just giving them a couple scoops of that for them to try, right? It's about introducing people to the food sometimes. And
I'll also say, over the years, we've transitioned some of our business model from serving at just a setup, an event of the community to more of, we've been doing a lot of plated dinners. We've done
you guys have done some at Full Bloom, that you've done some of the sit-down dinners.
We've done more of those in the last 2 years than we've ever done, and that's because we started realizing, sometimes what we're eating on the truck, it's hearty, it's delicious, it's quick, right? And we can't get those types of items out the truck like that, in that fashion. So when these opportunities have come up, we've really pursued them because it gives us a chance to get creative with our menu in a way that the truck kind of limits, right? And also for us to throw out some really new dishes that people have never had, that we've been eating at our house, right, for years, but that people haven't got to explore. So that's kind of a transition in our business lately that we haven't really even talked about, that from community events with our standard items to these plated, not really formally plated. We always do them family style, but it's a different type of, it's the same food, but it's different.
We can just put a little bit more into every plate.
Yeah.
And do multi-step processes to build flavor in the plates that we can't really do on a food truck,
right,
which is just cool. And a lot more foraging opportunities, looking for mushrooms and different kind of native species that we try to cook with as well, and non-native.
And that really does also take in kind of what we're talking about, that seasonal. So like if chestnuts are in season, we utilize them in our meatballs. If, whatever is happening at that point, we can throw it into that in a different way.
Hey, sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to make sure to bring to you something special today to help you out with making sure you're on track with your own retirement and financial future. Well, our financial pathway process that we go through a lot of times when we're sitting right here at this conference table is making sure that you're on track with 5 key areas of your financial plan, making sure that you have income that's going to last as long as you do, and a lot of that has to do with what are you spending, what do you have coming in, making sure that you're protected from market risk, making sure that we've got a tax minimization strategy. It's tax time of year. A lot of people are thinking about that, but are there ways that you can pay less taxes and be in a better position with that? We also are going to look at a healthcare plan
And lastly, your estate plan, just to make sure that you've got everything taken care of. If you haven't done that already, be sure to click the link down below so that we can schedule a time to be able to either meet at this table or connect with you virtually and make sure all your questions are answered. No cost, no obligation, just my offer to you because you're a valued listener or watching on YouTube. Now, back to this episode.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the menu changes. It adjusts, and it's changed over time from when you started with this.
Yes.
Because I'm going to imagine the truck now versus when you started, you've learned as you went that you had to make adjustments.
It's also been renovated.
Yeah,
the truck's been renovated 3 times to meet our needs. The menu has changed. From the original menu on day one, it actually makes us laugh to think about because it has changed a lot. And now it's kind of steady, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our menu, of course, we do have fluctuate multiple items, but there's 2 menu items that are always on the truck. And that's because, again, if we took them off, there would be chaos and erupt in the streets. We've actually joked about, like, let's not serve them today. We're like, let's not.
Let's not push that.
So, it's just been something that's evolved over time.
Now, for you all, just like any business, when you first kind of get this idea, you have to do some things to make it concrete. And you had to buy the truck. But then food trucks are an interesting thing in the area that, there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of things that have to happen before you can show up. How do you go about just trying to make all of that work?
It's kind of funny because when we started our food truck, there weren't many in town, and there was no push to create regulations for us to comply to. So we've kind of watched different local people create those regulations live. That they go to like the closest town that has a food truck culture. What I'm assuming is they follow those regulations, but we learn together, right? It's been a very collaborative process.
Starting a business is no joke, right? There's the red tape in the back where legal things that have to be taken care of, insurance, paying your taxes, getting your business set up as an LLC or a partnership or whatever you want it to be, making sure you're licensed with the state, making sure your health department's up to date. I do all of those things, right? So the background of having any small business, specifically a food truck, because you're in the food industry, and then there's like Serve Safe, and I mean, again, there's so many moving parts, and that's before you get any food out the door, right? So any small business that ever existed is doing that. They're getting all of those things completed on the back end, and nobody ever sees it. And they're usually doing it with a staff of 1 to 2 people.
Yep.
Something we didn't expect was like getting licensure in each place that we parked.
Annually.
Right?
It doesn't carry.
Some places are $150, some places are $300.
Some are nothing.
And after a while, when we were able to build enough, of a customer base and have a pull wherever we parked, we were able to renegotiate some of those fees with towns, saying, look, we're only here 3 times a year.
And we don't need a formal business license to park twice a year.
How many times do you want us to park for us to be able to pay for this business fee?
To make it worth it.
We're not trying to withhold any funds from you, but like, how about a $50 business fee? Because they're not thinking about that. A lot of times we have...
They might not have a specific food truck fee.
Right.
Instead, you get a business license. Well, I'm not doing business every day.
Right.
There's all
like
kinds of
taxes, right? In each county, they come after you going, hey, did you pay your taxes this month? And it's like, we don't plan to be there for 5 months, so we'll get with you, I promise,
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that you never calculate for, you never expect. But as you park in different places, you start to realize where the opportunity is and where it isn't. So when we first opened, what did we do?
Selective.
We said yes to everything. Absolutely everything. We'd go to like the opening of a cell phone store.
Your aunt's cookout on a Tuesday.
And then we realized like,
whoa,
we're going to say no to that
whoa,
next year.
This is not going to work.
That next year. And really just make the hard decisions of where it's worth it.
And we are family oriented, right? We do everything in-house between the 2 of us, and our family is our staff. By design, right? We enjoy that. We enjoy doing that. So I say that because that does add a different dynamic to what we're able to say yes to. Because if we had a full staff all the time, we could say yes to every single event that we wanted to do. And do we plan to upscale and grow over time? Sure, and staff it out, yes. But right now, you have to have us on the truck. and having full-time jobs, right? It's not always feasible to do everything all the time. So we've learned a lot of hard lessons, and not hard lessons. We've learned a lot of lessons, period. And really keeping everything, what we're going to do and not do, I guess, is evolved over time too, like everything else.
Now you said, hey, we've learned, and this has grown over the time of us doing it, but locally with them kind of realizing, hey, we need to have these certain things, and then just times have evolved. You've seen a lot more of these things pop up as far as food trucks and people out with that. We talked earlier as far as one of the biggest barriers to that just being, where do people prep and get ready for the food? If you're lucky enough to be able to have a truck or a setup where you can be your own commissary, where you can have that, that's great. But for somebody that's new, that's looking at this saying, hey, I want to do that same thing, how does somebody overcome that type of problem?
Like Caitlin said, we're very fortunate to be very family oriented, and our family will almost not let us do anything by ourselves. And that's been crucial and helpful, and has given us the momentum to be able to keep going when we really should have probably stopped. But I don't think that our business climate should rely on that type of generosity to be able to be successful. And right now, if you want to start a restaurant, let alone a food truck, you've got to be able to pay rent at a place that has a kitchen facility.
After you find one,
right? That if you can even find one, and that rent is probably going to be between $2,500 and $3,500 a month, and that is just almost too much of a risk for somebody who just is passionate about cooking and wants to see if people like their food. It took us a solid 8 months to get enough people to show up at our gigs where we said, okay, we can do this another year.
We're not just covering expenses, we're making some money.
Barely breaking even, or even
with a food concept that some people said would never be successful in this area.
And so it's a good lead-in, right? I don't know how other people solve this problem. I'll tell you how. You got to be scrappy, right? This Appalachian mentality around here is you've just got to be willing to endure some things. That's how we've done it. That's how we got to the point that we're at. We have jumped from kitchen to kitchen 3 or 4 times at this point for various reasons. So what we're doing to solve this problem is actually we're going to create a commissary kitchen. Like, that's the goal, right? So that anybody entering this industry or this wanting to do this exact same thing does have a place to go. So that's in the works on the back end, and another aspect of our lives. Put that somewhere else. But I think that it's just being scrappy, and I think being willing to kind of, before it's something like that is in place where you do have a formal place to go and start your business. You've got to be willing to try a lot of options. You've got to be willing to be in an uncomfortable kitchen that's really too small for what you're trying to do, having no storage. Buying a storage unit, put it down at the bottom of your heel so that you can put all your stuff in it, right? There's these things that are just, how would I word it? They're just like untold stories of small business, right?
Yeah, it's the MacGyver fix for everything. You know, you've got the duct tape and the battery, and you go, okay, well, how do we make it into what we need?
Right. Yeah. You do it while you can. I think the main strategy with our initiative is trying to give people just that one blanket of security that says, okay, this is a kitchen that isn't only relying on my rent to be able to function. And through our nonprofit that we just started called To the Brim, we're going to be able to help mentor people to a degree as to how to start their business or how to maintain their customer base.
And provide a physical space so that they're not having to call the local church and say, hey, you have a kitchen that's Virginia Health Department approved. You know?
And I think people who are scrappy, who are willing to just think creatively, are the ones who are going to be able to succeed long term in the restaurant business, particularly.
The art industry.
But I don't think it's fair to. There's so many untasted foods out there that people want to try, and they just have too many things in their way to try it, and they don't have enough time to prove that concept, right? So one of the ideas we had is to have local businesses sponsor kitchen hours, right? So these people who go through a course are able to try that out, right? And let people come in and try it. you don't build a reputation in 2 months, even 6 months. You build a reputation over a long period of time. And if you paid $25,000 in rent just to try to gain a reputation, and then you can't and you don't because you're so worried about paying that rent, what does that do for your financial future? What does that do for your confidence? It's not that easy, and we just want it to be a little easier.
I would say anybody who's ever started a small business and says that it's easy, either started with money, right? They had it to begin with, or they didn't do it entirely themselves. So, it's usually probably one or the other, because there is nothing easy per se about starting a small business.
What's that? It's that bootstrap mentality.
Yes.
That if you go out and you say, okay, I'm going to create something. What do I have?
Right. We parked at events and made $200, and that's not made. That's how much money we took in.
That's how much you took in, and that you say.
We lost a ton of money on those, and there's been plenty of those times where we're like, dang.
And anybody that's, you feel it when you go to the grocery store. Okay, food cost resonates not only there, it resonates extremely as far as on the restaurant side. And I saw businesses that saw a 60% increase in cost just at the start of 2020.
Yeah.
And then people are going, oh my gosh.
Brick and mortar specifically, right? Because they have all of this overhead associated with that.
So you see that, and it's this huge barrier that when you start to price out that plate, and you go, okay, I'm going to make this dish, and then you price it out, and you go, okay, well, I need to be able to get back my cost. I need to be able to cover my labor. I would like to have some profit.
Right. That's the point, right?
But is someone going to pay $22 for this plate to be able to make all of that happen?
Right.
And then you start
and
seeing.
We want them to feel full when they leave. So not only are you paying $22, but when you leave, are you going to go home and want a snack?
And our model,
not from Air Truck, you're not.
Totally.
No, it's busting to the brim.
Yeah.
And our model was higher risk because of that, because our main goal was to feed people
at an affordable price that tasted delicious.
Right. And my favorite thing about going to certain restaurants is that I actually can take food home. Yeah. Right. And we were like, let's give them so much food that they have to take it home.
Yeah, we're leftover people.
Yeah.
Right. So we get these stories of people who come back and they say, I used that chutney in my eggs the next morning.
A lot of people have it on eggs.
I actually did the curry with rice the next day, and I used the mashed potatoes with something else, potato cakes. That is a dream, right? Because they know where they got the food from, but they made it their own.
They enjoyed
You're
it.
igniting that in them.
They had that extra push to do something.
And that was risky because we didn't charge $20 a plate. We were like, if our price goes above $10, who are we? Who do we think we are, essentially?
Right.
And now, after 2020, we've had to raise it $2 because we just.
But you can leave with $12 and a lot of food.
Yeah, and we were the last people looking around. We were like, oh, everyone's raising their prices, but like.
Then we looked at our books. We're like, oh, that's
why I wrote that. This is who we. That's why we have to raise our prices.
Got it. Especially if we wanted to keep giving the quantities.
Because the last thing I want is when we go to restaurants with our families and they go, oh, well, it was okay, but not much food. Not much food. I'm not full.
Yeah.
Where do you want to eat next?
Oh.
I mean, when your father-in-law says that to you, or when your dad says that to you, you're like, oh man,
yeah,
we chose the wrong place.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be the nightmare. That you're like, hey, it tasted delicious, but I wish there was more.
Yeah.
That's a hard place to be put. So you've got a lot of stuff that's going to be going on this year, obviously with welcoming the new baby with this. But I know you've got a couple things that are already on the website as far as events to be able to look forward to for this year. If somebody wants to follow along with the Pakalachian to know when you're going to pop up next, where can they do that?
Good question. Any form of social media at the Pakalachian. Thepakalachian.com is the best resource to figure out where we're going to be parked. It will not have our private events listed, so if you're like, oh, are you available on this date? And we say, no, it's probably because we're doing a wedding or we're doing this, that, or the other, right? We don't list our private events, but public events are on the website, and we keep everybody up to date on Facebook, Instagram, all the things.
Yeah,
the Pakalachian.
We don't want to be crashing weddings to be able to come grab Pakalachian.
Okay, I can see it happening, but no.
Well, guys, I appreciate your time being able to share your story, and we do this each and every week to be able to share the story of people here in Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, and we want to make sure that you can continue to do that. So be sure to like, share, subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Andy saying I'll catch you down the road.
Come see us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.